Hello, this is Bobby Carlton. I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lioness magazine. And today I am here with an incredibly special guest, Audra. Audra, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. You
You're
are
welcome.
a diversity and inclusion expert with more than 35 years of experience in the field. You are working with some of the biggest names in the world. You're tops in the diversity and inclusion space. Tell us, tell us about it. Tell us where it started and tell us what you do today.
I'll be more than glad to. Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Bobby. If I were to really think about where it started, and I will be fast. It started when I was in the sixth. It started when I was in the sixth grade. In fact, I have two quick stories for you. And I was in school, and I said, apparently, I must have said something that offended this woman, and she told me, I mean, not woman, this little girl, and she told me that she and her girlfriends that they were going to beat me up after school. And so I was kind of quiet and reserved, and I was like freaking out all afternoon, like, oh my goodness. So when school was over, I was walking home by myself, and they caught up with me, and they got really like, we're getting ready to beat you up, we're getting ready to do this and that. And before I knew it, I had convinced them that I could help them with their homework and help them get better grades in school. And they left me alone, and I went home. So that was the first one. The second example is when I was in the 12th grade. I was in a civics class, and the teacher was giving us our finals. So I went home and created my own test to prep, and I gave it to all my friends. And so I took it to my teacher, and I said, I just want you to know this is how I prepped. I prepared this test. And he looked at this test and he said, do you know all the answers on this test? I said, sure, I made it up. He said, well, that's what I had planned on doing. So you don't have to take any more tests for the rest of the semester. You're going to be my aide, and you're gonna grade my papers for me. So you can imagine, whenever anyone took a test, I had to sit up next to him at his desk and grade the papers when they came in. And I could not look up, because every time I looked up, I would see all my friends' eyes looking at me like, help, I need help. But that was, again, an opportunity of me just giving back. And then when I was 13, I wanted to do something, and I volunteered with Head Start, working with children, young children, getting them ready for kindergarten children. This is in the Black community. And at 13, I volunteered, and I said to myself, I'm coming back next summer, but next summer they're going to pay me because I'm 14 years old and I can get a worker's permit. So again, giving back, and 14, I went back. Those three examples connect with the conversation I had with my mother when I was a teenager. And she said, do you have a sense of what you want to do when you grow up? And I said, Mom, I want to help people. And I had someone in my family that was a social worker, so I thought I would probably end up being a social worker. But it has always been with me to want to serve. And when I graduated high school, I didn't start college till I was 23. And when I started college, I had no money. It was so hard for me to make ends meet, but I was determined. I worked full time and went to school full time. And whenever I would be in a classroom and a professor would ask, is there anyone who does not mind volunteering? My hand would go up. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. But all through college, I volunteered, and I saw the results of it. I saw how it helped me serve others. I saw how it helped me build my brand. And so how it came back to me in a way that I never even imagined is because I knew the professors so well that when there was extra scholarships that came up, guess who had a chance to get access to additional funds to help me get through college. So that was the beginning when I saw that there was a link between I might be able to really be of service and make a living. And then graduated college, went into retail. I thought I was going to be this high-powered person in retail and the fashion industry. I was going to go to Paris and watch the models on the runway. And lo and behold, when I had to be in the buying office, it drove me nuts. I did not like it. They sent me out to the stores. I blossomed. And I was working hard. I had a team. I was having a good time, but something was missing, Bobby. I kept saying, I need to serve. There's something else. And I was getting ready to teach. In addition to working in retail, when there was a gentleman who came in with a body of content that really looked at talent, especially Black talent, and helped us manage the stereotypes. And he came to our company, and I went through the workshop, and it changed my life. And he was a sole practitioner. He got a partner, and I was their first employee. And the company dealt with the psychology of performance. What are the psychological variables that drive performance? And especially for those who are part of marginalized groups. So I started that. It caused me to leave Detroit and move to Boston. And I have been doing this work for the rest of the years. And as you said, it's been over 35 years. And what I thought was that I would be able to be of service. What I did not know was that I was going to build an organization along with others that in a different configuration, because we were bought, sold, acquired, merged, and then we were acquired by the company I'm with currently, Korn Ferry, 8 years ago. But I've been that same body of work that gave me life so many years ago is still the work that I get to sit in, and I get to deliver, and I get to serve with our clients, primarily in the US, but around the world.
So tell me what you do today. Like, give us the quick little rundown on your title, your company, and what it is you do.
Okay, I will give you the title in 2 seconds. Audra Bohannan, Senior Client Partner, Korn Ferry.
Excellent.
Now I'll spend rest of the time talking about what does that really mean. I sit on the consulting side of our business, and I sit in the diversity and inclusion practice. And in that practice, anything that has anything to do with diversity and inclusion, I touch. So whether or not I'm engaged in thought leadership, facilitation, executive coaching, consulting, strategy work, I can do it all. What connects it all together, that it is about a commitment that I have to support organizations, to create climates, to create cultures where all people can do their best work, no matter how different they are. I just have a fundamental belief that people deserve to be able to grow and learn, and they deserve to be able to realize their potential. They deserve to be able to live a full, rich life. And those things I feel are important, and that they're universal. We all want it. And so that's what I dedicate my life to doing.
So you mentioned, I think at least 4 or 5 times, the word serve. And servant leadership is, I know, a big concept for you. Maybe we can talk a little bit about servant leadership and the whole concept of it, and how it enriches the lives of others, and really how it impacts the world as it exists.
First of all, I just love those 2 words together, servant leadership, because quite often people don't think about them as together. I think the highest place you can be in your leadership is in service to others. It's not about you. It's about the community. I think about myself as an instrument. I'm an instrument that's to use to help other people to be better. It's about, how do I engage? How do I encourage? How do I inspire? How do I empower others to do their best? And so whether it is in an audience of 500, whether it's one-on-one executive coaching, whether it's a group of 20, it doesn't matter what the number is. But when I step in front of, or I am a part of some kind of a system that wants to serve others, I really I come to it in a humble way. And I say, I hope they're going to be better as a result of our engagement. And I hope I will be better as a result of our engagement. So whether I'm leading it or not, one of the things that I've always felt, that if you allow the individual or the group to chisel you, you will only get better. So when I think about my success in this field and I think about the level of impact that I have been able to make, most of that is due to the fact that I allow the groups to help me get better. And so when I am better, then I am able to give my best to them to help them get better. It's a reciprocal relationship. It really, and it has served me for my entire career. And it's really interesting. Every January, I ask myself, are you doing the work you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing? And the answer is yes. Do you enjoy the people that you work with? The answer is yes. Do you enjoy those that you serve? The answer is yes. And that, when I do that, I'm ready to re-up for another year. And it is important for me to do work that I'm passionate about, because the thing that I think is so important, I've used this many times when I've been speaking to groups. And the first is, does your performance drive your purpose, or does your purpose drive your performance? That's one. And the second one, the two most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you figured out why. And to me, people who, someone says, well, how do you really know if you're on purpose? Or how do you really know if you're tapping into your passion? I said, you are amazed that you get paid for what you do. And that if you didn't get paid, you would still do it. The fact that you do get paid is a wonderful thing. But that's how connected and aligned you are with your purpose. Is that it is, as my mother would say, it puts the J in your joy. It's your joy work. It's what gets you up. And given the tumultuous times we're living and how emotional all of us are, I really think for those who are doing work that they're passionate about, it makes it easier to manage through it emotionally and psychologically, compared that if it was just a day job that you could not stand. And I don't want to take anything away or bring any disrespect to people who have to get up and go in to take care of their families. I'm just saying, when it's aligned with your passion, it's sort of an easier road to travel.
Yeah. So diversity and inclusion often is addressing unconscious bias in the workplace. Can we talk a little bit about unconscious bias and how it's impacting workplace culture today?
Well, this is what's so interesting. The first thing is to just understand that we all have it. We try to say, but I'm a good person, I don't have unconscious bias. No, that's not true. Each and every one of us has unconscious bias. And so it's not anything to say, oh no, not me. It's thing to just understand. We all have blind spots. And it comes from a very good place. The way we were raised, our values and beliefs, what our aunts and uncles or grandparents or parents said, what's right, what's wrong. I grew up in a small town, Inkster, Michigan, outside of Detroit. If I had a colleague that lived in Iowa on a farm, there's a good chance we see the world differently. And so it doesn't make his view right and mine wrong, or mine right or his wrong. It's just the view of how we look at the world. And so by virtue of how we look at the world, it can cause us to have some misses sometimes. And if we're not careful, and especially if we were raised around certain demographics, we're seen as better than other demographics. When you think about the ones people talk about all the time, sexual orientation, race, gender, socioeconomics, special needs, if I was raised that demographic was right or wrong, that could shape how I approach people who are like that in the work environment. And here's another piece, Bobby, that I think is I find it quite fascinating. And it comes from the work of Dr. Bohannan, when she said the best thing you can do to manage unconscious bias is to outsmart your brain. And what she meant by that was to understand that we all have it. And it really is about the fact that we are an improving species, so just focus on getting better. And she said that quite often, unconscious bias less and less often has to do with harming others. Rather, it is the fact that you favor people who are like you. And we are tribal. We tend to want to be around people who are most like us. So the fact that we favor people who are most like us means that we cause disfavor for people who are not. So the way that I explain it when I'm in a corporate environment is I talk to leaders and I say, how many of you have go-to people? People you go to, they spell relief, you just know they got your back, they're going to always be there for you, and they just work. And everybody has and it's usually less than with my hand. It's only a handful. I said, and those people you affirm every single day. You affirm their value. You affirm how much you appreciate them. But there's another group that's not your go-tos. And I call it benign neglect. The absence of support is a form of discrimination. The fact that you don't open up the aperture and see that everyone should have the opportunity to grow and learn, not just your favorites. And so I just thought that was a good way of a good addition to thinking about it, because we tend to think about it in terms of if there's something I'm actively doing, and sometimes it is, but quite often it really is the favor that I give to those who are most like me means that there's a disfavor that I'm giving to those that are not. So one of the things that I talk about is, and we do this in the firm, we talk about how do you go from unconscious bias to conscious inclusion. It's not about, because if you allow your subconscious to drive you, you will continue to maintain the status quo. If you want to disrupt the default, then you have to do it at a conscious level. And when it comes to diversity and inclusion, or now diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is intentional work. It is focused work. It is some of the hardest work you can ever do, but it's also conscious work. So what we always recommend when we're having conversations on this topic is that we encourage our participants to get conscious. Once you are conscious, get curious, not judgmental. See, when I'm judgmental, that means I'm right. Therefore, I'm putting my right on you. When I'm curious, I'm intrigued. I want to know, and I'm interested in you. And then finally, get serious. And if you can do those three things, it tends to put you in a good place of keeping at a conscious level what is required for you to really see that all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Everyone needs to be allowed to grow. But fundamentally, everyone needs to be surrounded with people who believe in their capacity to grow and learn, as opposed to some people can and most people can, which is how many systems work in this country.
So I know you work with a lot of women leadership groups and women leaders individually. Can you talk about the impact of that work, both from a personal and professional level?
Well, I would probably say I usually am in three buckets: either women, people of color, or leaders who tend to be white and male. So those are, or executives. So those are my three audiences that I'm in front of most of the time. What I would say, doing this work for so many years, the progress for women has far outpaced the progress for people of color. Most organizations that I step into, they are either launching women's initiatives or they already have them. There are many you won't go into any organization and there's not going to be something for women. The idea of doing something for ethnically diverse talent is people are still uncomfortable around it. And they're uncomfortable around it just because they're uncomfortable talking about race. Gender is an easier play. My sister, my spouse, my partner, my daughter, you're dealing with gender all the time, but you don't necessarily have to deal with someone that's ethnically different from you. So it's an easier play to embrace, even though it has taken time. I mean, look how long it took women to get the right to vote. But the thing about it is we're seeing progress on boards. We're seeing progress at senior levels. There's an outward commitment that I find that is really strong. I'm not saying we've solved the problem, because when I started this work over 30 something years ago, most organizations in corporate America at a director level and above were white and male. Fast forward to today in 2020, when you look at corporate America, most positions at the director level and above are white and male. Whenever I'm dealing with leadership and I'm on a Zoom call and I look at the visual, it's white and male, predominantly. I'm not saying that there's not one or two, but notice I said, I'm not saying that there's one or two. The numbers are small. So, I think it's going to continue, especially where we're living right now. I think the opportunities for women are going to continue. I still think there are some fundamental flaws in our system that puts a stress on women that's different from men. And it's around the whole work-life integration. I'm not going to say work-life balance because I don't believe that exists. I wish we'd throw that term away. But it is around work-life integration, and the fact of how we're living now in this pandemic has caused the whole thing to crash in even more. So women are having to make some very tough decisions, with children being at home and having to do homeschooling and trying to drive careers. What does that really mean? And you have some women that are staying in and some men that are going on that are staying at home. But for the most part, the tough part is that you're finding instances where it's falling along the traditional route of decision making. So I just of how we're going to work this in terms of our careers when we have so much at home with elder care or child care that have to be managed. And sometimes women will fall more into the typical female roles. But the thing about it is, at the end of the day, we have made progress. Have we made as much progress as I expected us to make when I started doing this work? No. But I would say we've made better progress for women than we have for ethnically diverse talent.
So I find that many, I'm going to call them mission-based leaders, have philosophies that they live by and lead by. Can you maybe share yours?
Oh, yes. Mine is real simple, and you're not going to be surprised. It's live your life by design, not by default. As far as I know, in this configuration, we go around one time. That's it. It's not a dress rehearsal. And if you're going to be that grand old looking back on your life and say, I've lived well, what does that really mean? So I try to, in terms of for self, and I encourage others to be intentional. Live your life by design. It's not that you can figure everything out, but what you don't want to do is look up in 5, 10, 15 years pass you by and you can't even figure out what you did. What markers do you put in place that allow you to see that I am really living well based on my definition of success, based on what it means for me to be fulfilled? I had a friend of mine who called me up one day and she said, well, Audra, do you seek happiness, or are you in a place where you're happy? And I said, that's an interesting word, because that's not a word that I go after. I'm not trying, that's not the end for me. I'm not trying to reach this place of happiness. I said, I want to be fulfilled. I want to live a full life. I want to live a rich life. I want to live a life where I'm able to have legacy, where I can leave something behind, where I can say I made an impact, where I was able to touch someone, I was able to serve someone, I was able to make something better as a result of me being there. I say those are the things that are important to me. I say, some days I'm happy, some days I'm not, but I don't see it as an end state. I see it as an emotion that's wrapped in other emotions that we all deal with over a lifetime. So yes, live your life by design, not by default.
So our readers and listeners here at Lioness are often female entrepreneurs, and they come here looking for some takeaways, some advice. Can you take, your philosophy, the broad strokes, and give them some recommendations in terms of how they can ensure that their companies are building a culture of inclusion?
Absolutely. First of all, I would say to all the entrepreneurs for self, because see, one of the things that's interesting about women is that a friend of mine uses a term, we work from A to faint. We work hard. We are raised to do, and we keep doing and we keep doing, and we will take care of everyone else and then look up and there's nothing left for us. So I am a firm believer in self-care. So as an entrepreneur, you are only going to be able to give to others what you give to yourself. You have to be at your best. So you engage in self-care first. Then push against any stereotypes that are out there about what women can do around leadership, and understand that you have everything any man has, and you can go the distance if that's what you choose to do. So once you're centered, have a high impact belief system, understand cause and effect, understand what you can do, have the confidence, the belief that you can or can learn to make things happen, then you're going to be okay. Now, as you continue to build your business and you start thinking about your business, open up the aperture and resist being tribal. So as you hire, whether it's full-time, part-time, or contractor, or whether it's subcontracting, think about, you know what, I know I could call up Bobby, and I know Bobby, and I'm not saying you don't support people that you know well, because when you're an entrepreneur, you usually have a network of a community where you look out for each other. So you still should do that. I'm just saying, when you're building that community, be intentional. We call it diverse by design. You intentionally say, I am going to create a culture where diversity is going to be one of my values. How I hire, how I develop, I'm going to always create bringing diversity in and to leverage that diversity through inclusion, because they're two separate words. Diversity is anything that could differentiate a person or group from another. Inclusion is a behavior. How do you demonstrate value? How do you demonstrate appreciation? How do you demonstrate that you really want me to be there? That's shaping your culture. So one of the things as an entrepreneur you want to give thought about is, what kind of culture do I want to create for my business? And how do I ensure that every single person I interact with, when I walk away, they feel appreciated and not tolerated? And when you start doing that and remember, I said it's conscious, conscious inclusion. That means you got to keep it up here, because it's real easy to default back to the status quo. And when you default back to the status quo, you're going to go back to what's similar, as opposed to appreciating of what's different. So those would be a couple of things that I would think you could do.
Sounds like eternal vigilance.
It is. It is. That's a good way to describe it, Bobby.
Excellent. Okay. Audra, I know you have a million things left to do today, but I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. So thank you again, Audra Bohannon from Corn Ferry. Oh my goodness.
That's quite all right. I know what you meant.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay. Bye-bye.